Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Today we're checking out a brand new control surface and mixing software that works inside your DAW. Let's get started. Today we're looking at Softube's Console 1 Channel Mark III, the latest version of their Console 1 hardware as well as software. Now this is a huge jump forward for both the hardware and the software, as you'll see. I've got it set up in a session here in Studio One, but it's compatible with VST3, VST2, audio units, as well as AAX. Now in VST3 you get some extra features because of the support that VST3 has for working with your DAW. So I actually have control over some of Studio One's mixing features as well, as we'll see. Now when I start out a session and I'm using Console 1 like this, what I like to do is put the Console 1 plugin across all my channels. Now in Studio One you can do that by selecting a channel, holding Shift, and then selecting the rest of your channels, insert the plugin, and it'll automatically load right across there. In Pro Tools, if you hold down the Option key, it'll load the same plugin across all the channels, and so on. Each DAW has their way to do that. Once you have that plugin across all your channels, all your inserts, and even on your master outputs, then you can take charge of everything from the hardware right here. Now this is really nice because this hardware basically has one knob per function. So the EQ controls are dedicated, the compressor controls over here are dedicated, and so on. This makes it very intuitive to just reach up and use this like you're working with hardware. It's a very analog-like experience. And in fact, the new Console 1 Channel Mark III hardware has analog feel potentiometers, they call them. My understanding is they're actually analog controls that are digitally sampled. So as you turn that, you're getting incredibly high resolution. They're saying 10 times the resolution of a standard encoder. This makes it very smooth to operate. You can set the velocity curve for the knob so it responds to the way you want to turn things. If you turn them slowly, you get fine adjustments. Turn them quickly, you get bigger jumps, and so on. So it's very intuitive to use this hardware. Speaking of the hardware, you can see that I've got it as a desktop unit here. You can also rack mount it, you can VESA mount it. It can be bus powered from your computer, or a new feature with the Mark III hardware is that it also can use a power supply, a 5-volt power supply that works into one of the USB-C ports. USB-C ports, there's now 2 of those. So I've got the power supply coming into one, the other one is connected to my computer, very convenient. If you're using bus powering, you can use that other USB-C port for a dongle or to route to something else. So a nice feature to have that extra USB-C port. Another great new feature of the hardware is we now have 2 high-resolution screens built right into the hardware. In this case, I've got one set up here on the right to show me my channel selection, and as I adjust different controls, it'll show me those controls. You can see I just have to touch to move to the different controls, and actually if I turn one of those controls, double tap, it'll go back to its standard setting. We can put that back to 0 if we like as well. Now I can also set this up to be a VU meter. We have a number of different things that can be displayed, different parameter displays, compressor curves, and so on. It'll tell you what's happening with the different controls as you're working with them. So it's really nice to have that instant feedback right on the control surface itself. Across the top, we have our channel selection buttons. Now there are 20 of these. I've selected channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and you can see in Studio One that we're moving through the channels as well. And also notice a new feature, and that's that the color changes. On the button, the LED color changes to match the color I have assigned inside my DAW. That's very cool. It really helps you to keep things organized. Now if you have more than 20 channels inside your DAW, use the page control. So I hit that, hit number 1, and now I'm actually looking at the delay over here in Studio One, channel 21. I can move to 22. Those are all aux returns with effects returns. And I can even jump over to my main output since I have Console 1 instantiated there too. Now you might notice here in Studio One that across the top here on each of the actual channels or tracks inside of Studio One, I've got the Console 1 software turned on. So it's active, but on the inserts and on the master, I've actually got it turned off, so it's bypassed. I'm not using the plugin, but having that plugin there allows me to select that track. So for example, we're here on the master, and now when I turn the knob, I can adjust the volume level there. I can do solo, I can do mute, I can do pan. I'm on the master, so there's no pan there, but on a channel I could be panning as well. So we have control over the channel controls too. And let's jump back here to channel 1 on Studio One. And in this case, I also can access sends. So we've got 6 sends that are available now. Previously there were 3, and now there are 6. So if we select one of those, turn our control, you can see that the send's changing inside of Studio One. If I double tap, we'll go back to our default setting. So again, we now have 6 sends. So I've got 3 buttons here. When I hold down the shift control on the surface, now I've actually gone to send 4, send 5, and send 6. So when you're setting up your DAW session, you want to instantiate Console 1 across your entire mixer, set up your sends the way that you want them, get everything all set up, color-coded, all those kind of things, and then it'll automatically basically just latch right into the Console 1 hardware and you're ready to go. Makes mixing a breeze. You do that setup and now we can just sit down and very intuitively work with the hardware hands-on while everything's happening on screen. Now, of course, a big feature of the Mark III version of Console 1 Channel is the software, and this is the core mixing suite. So if I hit the display button here, we'll open that up, and you can see that I have my display of what's happening here. So we can choose our channels. You can see those changing across the bottom. And as I do that, I'm moving to the channel strip for each one of those. Now the channel strip has input gain, it has filters, it has phase invert. We've also got a gate or a shape. So that can be a gate or a transient shaper. We've got EQs here. We can choose either a vintage style EQ or we can jump over to a modern style EQ. We've got compressors as well. There's a new drive section that allows you to add harmonic distortion in and really bring life to your tracks if you want. And you can see over on this side, here's where I've also got my sends, I've got my main output, I've got my volume for the track, solo, mute, and so on. Everything that's happening on the hardware is reflected in that software as well. And this is where the actual processing takes place. Now, Softube is well known for the accuracy and the sound quality of their plugins, and all of that has been brought to bear here in the core mixing suite as well. Fantastic sounding plugins. Set it up the way I have it here, and basically you have a mixing console right in front of you with the same channel strip across all your channels, your auxes, and your master as well. Super cool way of working. So let's take a closer look at the software. So as we work with each section, it will actually turn on. Right now, I've got pretty much everything turned off. We have the filters are on. So I've got a low cut filter here. We can adjust the frequency. If we hold shift, we'll be adjusting the slope of that. We've got a high cut filter as well. Again, we have frequency, we have slope. We've got polarity invert here. You can see that phase invert turns on inside the channel strip. We've got our input gain control for the plugin as well. Roll that back to 0. Now we can move on next to the shape. So if we turn that on by clicking the button, we're now looking at the noise gate for this particular channel. You can see we've got sustain, again, dedicated knobs for everything, punch, the gate on and off, the amount of gating that we're doing. We've got release time here as well. If we double tap, we go back to the default setting. Now you see here with shape, we've got two buttons for the on section here. We've got the gate that we were just looking at. If we click this, we'll turn on the core panner. And this is a very detailed panner that allows us to place everything exactly where we want it in our stereo field. So we have control over tilt, we have depth. We can also do mono, on and off. We can swap left, right by holding the shift key and so on. But an interesting point is that as we look at each of these sections, what you see here isn't everything that's available there. There are many different types that are available. We can actually completely reconfigure the plugin with different processors behind each of these. So let me show you what I mean. First of all, if we click the load section strip, we can choose different consoles to emulate. Now I was using the core mixing suite there, which is the standard thing. We've also got Softube's American Class A console, British Class A, the old Console 1 fader, we've got the Chandler limiter, and so on if you have those installed. So let's stay with this. So I was using the volume or select knob here, the main volume select knob, to scroll through those. And then we could press the solo button, which is also our enter or OK button, or you can push mute, which is our cancel button. So I'll go ahead and cancel that. So that's how you change the overall channel strip. But we can also change the individual components within that channel strip. To do that, we hold the load strip section. You can see here I've got my different sections here. So let's go to our shape. We can choose shape 1, click OK, and now we have a number of different choices there. So we could do British Class A gate, we could do the Core Suite gate and shape, the XL9000K series gate, and so on. So you have a choice of different sounds, different features for each of those different units within that shape component inside the channel strip. This gives you a lot of flexibility. Again, to scroll through those, we're using the main volume control, which is our select, and then we use solo or OK or mute cancel. So I'm going to cancel back out of that. Now next up on the channel strip is our equalization section. Again, we have two different types of equalizers here. We have the Core Vintage. Let's go ahead and turn that on. You can see that this is a parametric EQ, 4-band parametric EQ. We can also choose the type, shelf, bell, low cut for the bands there, also for the high band. And then we've got individual controls over the 4 frequency bands. Now, if we click on the right arrow for the equalizer section, we'll go over to Core Modern. Now, this equalizer gives us a couple of extra features. It's a different sound quality, a different shape to that, but you can see that we jump to slope controls here. There's also different Q controls there that you can access as well. So we have a lot of versatility there. And again, we can hold down to choose exactly the equalizer that we want. And now we can scroll through the different types, and you can see that my UAD plugins are showing up there, the ones that I have installed. So I could actually make my equalization section one of the UAD plugins and control it from right here with the Console 1 channel. Our next section is the compressor. We've got the FET compressor. We've also got a bus compressor here by using the right and left arrows. And again, we can click to hold that down. We could choose our different compressors. And when we select that, you can see we've got the different Softube console compressors there. We've also got, in my case, I've got UAD plugins installed, so I could choose to use one of those compressors as well. Our final section is the drive and sort of the master section, if you will. So if we turn that on, we've got drive control here, the amount of drive. We can choose the character that we're going to have there. And this section is also where we have our channel pan controls. And again, that's actually affecting what's happening inside the Studio One mixer. We've got our send controls for the 3 sends that I've got loaded up at least. And then we can choose volume here as well. Now, one other thing to notice is there's a button here labeled main out volume. You can assign one of the outputs, or one of the channels for that matter, to be your main output. So when I click that, no matter what I'm doing anywhere else, now I can adjust the master output for my Studio One mixer. Very slick. Or I can jump back to my channel very easily. So this gives me instant access to the master output. There are other features here as well. There's so much happening with this core mixing suite. For example, there's a new tape preamp. You can see I turn that on and off here. It's reflected inside the core mixing suite plugin as well. And that gives us that nice tape emulation being applied to our tracks. So you can add that along with the console emulation that you're working with inside the Softube software. So we've got tape preamp, we've got the high-low filters, we've got shape, which can be, that's actually a dual module, so that can be the panner, that can be a transient designer, that can be a noise gate. We've got 2 EQs, multiple modules there, and all kinds of different EQs and plugins we can load up. In fact, there's something like 90 different plugins between Softube and UAD that are compatible with this whole system. Then we've got our compressor, 2 different compressors there. We've got our drive section, and then we've got actually our channel control section for our DAW that we're using. So this is the display mode, if you will. We can also change the mode that we're viewing, so we can look at sort of an overview of what's happening inside our console. We can shrink this down and just look at the knob controls. We can just look at the channel controls, the channel selection at the bottom there of the screen you can see, or we can make that even smaller. And it's actually at the top now, if you see it up there at the top of the Studio One screen. Now, we don't have to look at the display for the core mixing software this way. We can also choose to hide that by pressing the on button there, and we can open up the individual plugins that are on each channel. In this case, we actually can directly turn the different sections of the core mixing suite on and off. We can pull this out to see more, make it larger, smaller, and so on. So you can choose to work either way. So in this case, I'm actually working on the plugin that's on the channel. When we open up the core mixing suite display, you're doing the same thing. You're just looking at it in more of an overview fashion. And this is the way that I actually like to work. What I like to do is actually pull this off onto a second screen, like I've got my laptop set up here. And so I will put that core mixing suite display over here on my laptop so it's always visible. And then I can work in my DAW. I've got basically my console visible over here, control it all from the hardware. Super slick way to work. If you've been looking for a console-like mixing experience, I really think you need to take a look at the Softube Console 1 Channel Mark III. It's so tightly integrated with the Core Suite mixing software. It gives you control over your DAW as well. And the experience with those analog feel controls, with the knob per parameter control, the instant access to all your channels, really is a great experience that allows you to focus on what you're doing rather than looking at the screen so much. It really allows you to work more intuitively, and I highly recommend it. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for checking out the Softube Channel 1 Console Mark III. For more information, visit sweetwater.com, or better yet, contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. They'll have all the details for you.